Welcome to Survival Mode Disrupted, the podcast for those who are done performing, done people pleasing, and done living life on autopilot. I'm your host, Letitia, the Survival Mode Disruptor, and this is where we create disruptive, unapologetic transformations for those who are ready to exit survival mode and reclaim their power. Every episode is your permission slip to burn the rule book, break the cycle, and finally build a life that feels like yours. So let's disrupt everything that's holding you back and start living life on your own terms. Welcome to Survival Mode Disrupted. This is your trigger warning. This podcast contains unfiltered conversations about trauma, abuse, and survival. Discretion is advised. This is not therapy or medical advice, just real people sharing real stories. So please take care of yourself and pause if you need to. If this conversation hits home, grab the book Survival Mode Exit Plan, your raw, unapologetic blueprint to break free. Available now by scanning the QR code or clicking the link in the comments. Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of Survival Mode Disrupted. This is your host, Letitia, the Survival Mode Disruptor, and I am super excited to have Bree here today with us.
Yes.
Welcome,
Hello,
Bree.
hello.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah. So first off, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Bree. I am a parts work somatic therapist. I'm an expat, so I'm a New Yorker who has now moved to Spain. I've been here now 6 years, and I am a creator. My mission since really moving to Spain has been how can I connect with what I studied, being a therapist, helping others. And after my own traumatic life experiences, it really led me into this path of if I'm able to check in and heal and just really reconnect with myself. That was really why I came to Spain, was to reconnect myself. If I'm able to do that, how can I help other women do the same? So that started my mission, and it kind of shifted gears from what traditional therapists are led to believe or led to practice when you're in a more constricted space, especially if I was to be practicing in New York, let's say, for example. Here I have the freedom to really tap into different modalities and frameworks to individualize my approach for each person based on their life experiences. So with all that being said, my mission is really to help encourage others to look within, to simplify personal development, to make it accessible. And that's why I'm a creator with the content I create, with the stationery that I create, workshops I've created in the past. So it really is my mission to see how can I serve based on what I've lived and what I've gained and what I've learned.
That's lovely. And I'm hoping that in this conversation, we can dig into the different modalities because I do find that interesting. And I think it's really important for the listeners to get a wide access to the different modalities. But let's start
Hmm.
with your story. Tell us your story
Yeah.
to and through survival mode.
Yeah. So, I mean, like all of us, we all have a story, right? So, the type of trauma that I've experienced is there's layers to it, right? Like I'm first generation American. My parents are from South America, and they met in New York. And that I'm a child of divorced parents as well from a very young age. So there was already, without me, of course, knowing so at that time, or even into early adulthood, of trauma of abandonment and neglect. And they were great parents. I don't want to get paint the wrong picture either. They were great parents with what they knew. So there was that. And that smaller T trauma, I feel like then influenced potentially the type of men that I was attracted to. and that I was trying to find that sense of safety and reassurance and love, what I thought love should look like. So then that kind of moves me forward to being a teenager, dating boys that just did not appreciate me. And I would also allow them to just speak to me however they wanted to, and so on. So then leads me into my early adulthood where I got into a more long-term relationship. And in the beginning, it was nice, it was fine, it was good. We were friends. But after within a couple of years, I think his own insecurity started to come through. And that's when the domestic violence started. And that's when it turned into a pattern. It wasn't just like a one time incident. But at that point, it was also, you start to disassociate a little bit from yourself because you know it's not right. You know it doesn't feel good. But yet there's this strong connection that you have with the person. So it starts to become, yeah, the only way you can survive, right? Without even recognizing that you're just trying to survive is to dissociate. So you can still feel like someone has my back. I have that someone, even though that someone is not treating me in the best way. So yeah, my trauma, it has layers to it. And it's all kind of influenced each other to kind of like this last experience that I had within this previous relationship.
I do find it interesting that you mentioned the layers of trauma and how it kind of fed into the next element of
Mm,
trauma, right? I think
mm,
a lot of times, especially in this space, people sharing their stories, I think that is a commonality, right? Like it started
mm.
here and it kind of just blossomed and grew um because it wasn't being addressed. And oftentimes we don't recognize that there is something to address, right? Even though,
Yeah.
you mentioned the feelings of abandonment and stuff, we don't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily identify that as trauma.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then that grows because we are then searching for something to
Mm-hmm.
fill that void that we're feeling. And we may not always have the best decision making around that because
Exactly.
there
Yeah.
it creates this almost desperation to fill the
Mm,
void.
yeah, definitely. And it's just like we're not taught in school about just our emotions, how to express our emotions. All we know are like our basic emotions, which is happiness, sadness, anger, and fear. But then aside from that, we don't really know if we're feeling some type of desperation or what urgency feels like in the body where you're trying to like cling on to this relationship, but you know it's not the best for you. Like we're just not really taught that kind of social, even just somatic. And that's a lot of what I focus on is somatic experiencing, like really noticing those physical sensations due to stress, due to trauma, and just how life is impacting us. So it's like we don't have that knowledge or that language. So even though now I can say, yeah, there was some abandonment and neglect when I was 10, 15, and so on, I didn't know what I was doing. I
Hmm.
was just kind of wired to believe from those past experiences that this is what I deserved, that
Hmm.
these relationships of men who were emotionally disconnected themselves and emotionally immature was that was it for me.
And
And I'm
sorry. Okay.
no, no, I was just gonna say like I'm not even upset at these previous versions of myself because that's another thing. We could be so judgmental to how we were or how we responded or showed up. And it's like we didn't know any better.
That's a very key point there because oftentimes we condemn ourselves for the decisions that we make
Mm,
without the reconciliation that we made the best decisions at the
yeah.
time with the information and the
Yes.
healing that
Mm-hmm.
we had at the time.
Definitely.
And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes when we are condemning ourselves, we're looking back from a place where we are already on a healing journey or we've learned something new.
Mhm.
And then, like, well, why didn't we act from this information? Because we didn't
Yeah,
know. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
Yeah. And it's like I feel
Um,
like we don't have the capacity.
Mhm.
almost yet to know or what to even do with that information. So
Mhm.
it's like, even though for about 2 years within this 5-year relationship was when the mistreatment and the violence, the abuse was really happening, I didn't have that capacity to make a decision. I knew it wasn't right, but yeah, I didn't have that bravery
Mhm.
to really take action and to even have the capacity to even acknowledge my own emotions, that I
Mhm.
was sad and that I was angry and that I felt betrayed and disappointed. So it's like I was working with where I was, and I
Mhm.
can't be mad at that.
No, you can't. You absolutely can't. So what shifted things for you?
So I want to say we had a really big fight, and this fight really turned things around for me. Like, I saw myself, I saw the marks, and I was just like, wow, this isn't going to change, nor is it going to get better, because this was really like the worst fight we ever had. And it was that moment that I was like, okay, I need to get out. But prior to that fight, I had started journaling. And as I started journaling, I would look through the pages of what I was writing. And I was like, one moment, I'm like, this is great. I love this relationship. I'm so happy. And then the next moment, I'm like, I fucking hate him. And I'm just like, okay, there's this like, the spectrum of feelings felt here is not making sense. How am I going from, oh, I really love this person, this relationship is great, to I fucking hate him? And I was just like, that's not the kind of relationship that I want to be in, experiencing such contrasting emotions. So through journaling, I started noticing the pattern of what was really going on. Because it's one thing to have the conversation in your head and then disregard it, ignore it, and then you're also disconnected from yourself. So you're already not really feeling your emotions and what's really kind of what you're really experiencing from that pain and that mistreatment. So now, having physical proof of what I've written and what I'm thinking and feeling and what I was saying, I was like, shit, I can't keep lying to myself anymore. Like, this is the truth. So it was like those journal pages really started giving me the courage. And then this last big fight, we were like on a trip as well. So it wasn't like I could leave right away. I had to be really strategic with acting like everything's okay. Yeah, we're still together. Yeah, I'll go buy some foundation, cover up my face, no problem. But as soon as we got back to New York, I was like, it's over. I'm done. And that's when I ended the relationship. And just because it ended didn't mean it was easy. He was still trying to get in contact with me. And I really had to reach out to other people to really help me, to strengthen my own support circle and let them know a little bit of what was happening. It even took me years to even tell my mom what happened. And it wasn't only within maybe the past 2 years that I told her. And in total, it's been like over 7 years since I ended this relationship. So it just shows how much we still carry that burden from the trauma. But I would really say it wasn't until being a therapist, I didn't know I was in survival mode within this relationship, that I was like dissociating just to kind of get by. It wasn't until I moved to Spain and I lost the job that I had, became unemployed and illegal in a foreign country, that I really started noticing what survival mode actually felt. And it made me then reflect on this past relationship and how I was also in survival mode then, and how ultimately I've been in survival mode the majority of my life.
So powerful though, right? Like I can relate to that. We go
Mm,
through these situations that create patterns in our lives, and oftentimes we dissociate, we just move on, we
mm,
stuff, we process the residual emotions like shame and guilt and all of that,
Mm,
right? But it doesn't click right away. Like I have
yeah.
these conversations about survival mode because I want people to be able to self-identify and self-recognize through
Mm,
someone else's story, because oftentimes we cannot draw these parallels, right? I
mm,
didn't see how long I have been in survival mode until 20 years after I left my first husband.
okay.
I couldn't draw
Mm,
parallels. And it wasn't until I started writing my memoir and actually
mm,
revisiting things, right, that I
yeah.
recognize, holy shit. Like I have
Mm,
been in this phase, in this space for decades, but
mm-hmm.
it became the
Definitely.
norm for me.
Yeah.
I got so used to fight and flight. I got so used to not being able to recognize how unhappy I was
Mm, yeah.
because I just stuffed everything and kept moving.
Yeah. And even just kind of like when we look at our society as a whole right now, there's so much technology. You can get caught up in TikTok for like an hour and like not even know what happened. And there's no, I'm not throwing any shade at that. I'm just saying that there is so much technology that we're exposed to that we can easily disassociate with. And it's just like with all of that, it keeps us disconnected with the high demand and stress at work. It's like that also keeps us in this kind of hustle mindset. How much can we perform? How much can we produce? Rather than looking at the quality of what you're doing, but you're more like, how can I do more?
Hmm.
So it's like as a society, I feel like we're all in survival mode, plus adding on to whatever trauma we have then also experienced. Like all these layers of trauma, the smaller T's of the abandonment, the neglect, to the bigger T's of like abuse and natural disasters and so on. So yeah, I feel like this is a really pivotal point in our lives and in society where we get to make a decision of, are we going to continue living disconnected, or are we going to just offer ourselves a little bit of courage to just notice, well, what am I feeling? What is actually happening? So we can live a more authentic and aligned life.
Hmm. I often think that, society praises survival, but
Mm,
doesn't encourage thriving, right?
yeah,
It and you said it very clearly, like most of us we're all in survival mode because we aren't
yeah,
taught how to move
mm,
beyond it. We're not even taught how to recognize survival
mm-hmm,
mode, right? Like I
yeah,
remember when I first started talking about this, and I asked people, because my other business is market research, so I
mm,
started asking people how would they describe survival mode. And I remember a few people were like, is it even a real thing? Isn't it just like another
mm,
buzzword that we're getting because like
yeah,
everybody's talking about it on TikTok? And I'm like, no, it actually is a real thing. You know what I mean? Like
mm-hmm,
it's real. And I remember at
yeah,
one point in time, social media has created awareness in ways that we haven't seen previous,
mm,
right? So like
yeah,
all of a sudden we're having all of these conversations about narcissism or burnout and blah blah blah.
mm,
And I remember even when burnout was like this like big buzz, burnout, burnout, burnout. And I was like delusional, like, okay, that must be a white person thing. Like black people don't burn
mm.
out, people of color don't burn out, until I hit a wall. And then I'm like,
Mm,
oh, so
this is what it
that's what it
is.
is, right? So
Yeah.
part of the reason why I really feel like this podcast and these conversations are so important is because I think we don't take enough time to consider what we consider the buzzwords are
Mm,
actually impacting us in real time. Like,
yeah. Yeah. And it's like the thing that I always tell my clients is like remembering your body's function. Like your body and your mind are like we are here, literally, the way we function is just to survive. And it's like our ancestors, they needed that. Like they were hunting, and that's a whole other topic in itself when we think about our ancestors and the type of society that they were really in. We don't know how advanced, well, there is more proof showing how advanced it was, but nonetheless, they were actually a lot more connected with their body and with nature than we are. But nonetheless, like ancestors aside, our body is here to keep us alive. So everything that it's looking out into the world is trying to assess, is this a threat or not? So even now that I'm 7+ years out of this toxic and abusive relationship, there could be little things that still trigger a
Mhm.
sensation that I felt 7+ years ago. And
Mhm.
even though logically I know, oh, wait, but I'm not in that situation anymore, physically, that memory is like still stored and it gets activated again because of that association that was initially made. And with the body's main objective to keep us alive, it's like, oh shit, is this another threat again that I need to get into that fight and flight mode? So it's really powerful how your body holds on to that memory.
Mhm. So let's dig into that a little further because I know your work around
Mm,
semantics is really about releasing what's being stored
mm,
in the body. So
mm,
can we discuss how our body stores our trauma, first of all, and
mm,
then the work that you do in helping people
mm-hmm.
release it?
Yeah. So trauma in itself, it's either one major distressing event to smaller, ongoing, distressing events. But the reason that it's distressing is because it's changing your perception about yourself, how you view other people, and how you view your surroundings. So instead of feeling, let's say, calm when you're not doing anything, you might be a little bit more on guard because your body doesn't know what it feels like to be calm because your body's gotten so used and your nervous system has gotten so used to being on edge, to like holding tension in your shoulders, to just keeping your muscles very tight. So with the work that I do, especially with somatic experiencing, is using, just noticing what is there, what you feel. And for everybody listening, like you could do this right now. You could just take a moment. You could take a breath, just taking a deep inhale through your nose and then slowly exhaling out through your nose. And just take a moment to notice, are my shoulders all the way up to my ears? Or are my shoulders down to the side of my body? Are my thighs fully soft on the seat? Or are they kind of like clenched, my thighs? And just by noticing those sensations, it's not to say, oh my gosh, there's all this trauma. I'm the worst person ever. We're not here to judge ourselves. We're just here to notice because the more we notice, the more we learn, the more self aware we become. And no one can ever take away that information from you about who you are as a person. When you have that information, the rest, it's like you're unstoppable at that point because you know how to show up for yourself. So it's like when it comes to then really releasing that, there might be some sound that you might use. And that's where like the parts work comes into play because it's like the sensation. Let's say you feel something in your chest. It's like, okay, what would that look like? If that was a character, if that was an image, if that was an object, like, so you want to start kind of creating a persona of what this sensation feels like so you can view it outside of yourself rather than being like, oh, this is who I am. Because that's not who you are. It's just something you're experiencing. So viewing it outside of yourself by viewing it as like a part, by making it a persona, and then thinking about, well, what does it want to say to me? Starting to open those channels of communications with yourself and these sensations, a very just open place. And it's a process in itself. Like I don't want to make it sound like it's very simple and it's easy. It is a process because when there is trauma, there's going to be resistance because your body's like, mm-mm, I don't want to change. Don't get rid of me. I've helped you. I've kept you alive all this time. And that's true. but we don't need that same function right now. So this part of you, the stress, the overthinking, the shame, is still going to be there, but it doesn't need to keep showing up in that same way that's making you feel stuck in life because you can't take the step forward because you're wondering what's going to happen when I do take that step. The unknown is so scary. So it's a process in itself, but I feel like that's the biggest thing that you could offer yourself is to take a moment to just check in and notice. What does that feel like? Even when you're taking a shower, it doesn't have to, us checking in doesn't have to be for like an hour. We can really make these practices our own.
I often talk about, I believe there are three phases to accessing survival mode. The first is awareness, and I think
Mm,
that's what you're speaking to, right? Being
mm,
aware of how we're feeling, being aware of what it's doing to our body, so that we
mm-hmm,
can take action, right?
mm-hmm.
I always liken awareness to like a lighthouse because it
Okay.
gives us the awareness. Like we're in a lighthouse in the middle of a night, in the middle of the ocean, and then all of a sudden there's this beacon of light, gives us the opportunity
Mm,
to see what's in front of us, what's around
yeah.
us, what's behind us. And then it gives us the opportunity to change our
Mm,
path, right? Like if we have shipwrecks within 10 feet of us, having that
mm-hmm.
beacon of light show us, it allows us to change course and not crash. And I
Yeah.
think it's really important that we start taking the time to check in with ourselves and listen, because that often it
Mm-hmm.
becomes our biggest guide, right? Like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
listening to ourselves and our bodies and our desires, because oftentimes we're not even tapped into that, right? Like as a
Mm-hmm.
society, we are conditioned to follow social constructions and social controls. We are
Yep.
conditioned to get on what I consider is the conveyor belt of success, good education, good
Mm-hmm. I
job,
love
and you
that.
better stay there. Um,
Yeah.
so we don't operate outside of those norms
Mm-hmm.
until something happens, or until we are kind of forced to adopt a different view or perspective of something, right? Like, or maybe
Yeah.
even like someone who's like lived in the States, or I'm originally from
Mm,
Bermuda, lived in Bermuda for so long, you are surrounded by conditioning, you're surrounded by traditions, you're surrounded by all of
mm-hmm.
these things that kind of force you to stay into a box, and then you get up and leave and go live in Spain, and now you're in a
Yeah.
community where, hey, we stop the world for a couple of hours every day so you can relax.
Mm,
Like all of a sudden it's like I've never really actively thought about relaxation, or I've never
mm.
actively thought about like what I would do with my free time. All of a sudden you're in this place where your perspectives are shifting and you show up differently, and it's no different from
Yeah.
healing ourselves, right? Like we get
Mm-hmm.
so ingrained and embedded in the way that we have come to live
Yeah.
that we don't explore differently until it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, I'm being introduced to this,
Yeah.
and like, how is it that I didn't know? Or like, why did it
Mm-hmm.
take me so long to come to this realization? So, with the work
Yes.
that you do with
Mm.
people, I'm sure that you see that, like, you've just given me like, like this key to unlock this secret garden that I didn't know existed,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, it's so beautiful the work that I get to do because I feel like I've really tailored it to what I'm most interested in, which is like trauma,
Hmm.
so like neuroscience, nervous system work, and this more like holistic and just integrative approach. So it's
Hmm.
not so much of that kind of traditional Freudian approach to therapy. So I love it. But
Hmm.
even for myself, Like I love what I get to do for my clients, but I love what I've been able to offer myself as well. I've also been in therapy. I've also had coaches. So it's like I've also done the work where I've guided myself, but also I've let others guide me. And that has been crucial. But I feel like the biggest thing that really has led me to this life that I now have was ending that relationship, going back to my journal and writing out like, what's next? What do I want? And just having that, starting that conversation of reconnecting with myself.
Mhm.
And I literally said, I want to work abroad because I always wanted to study abroad when I was in college and I never did because of that relationship. So I was like, this moment is now for me. So I was a family therapist at the time in New York. And I was like, I'm putting my career on hold. And I was like, and I'm coming to Spain. And I taught English out here for 8 months. And it just changed my perspective. I was exposed to a whole new culture. I was thinking that I'm coming to Spain. But in reality, I was coming to the region in Spain of Catalonia. So I learned about the Catalan culture and the language, and it was just a different vibe altogether. I was like, wow, I, first generation, little itty bitty Latina me, can have a different experience. Like I don't have to grind and hustle. I don't have to be focused on the flashy, showing what I have out of my success. Like I can actually enjoy the Mediterranean. I can enjoy fresh food. Like, what is this? And it changed my life really. And so I went
Mhm.
back to New York because that was the plan. But at that point, I had also met my now fiance, who he did the same program that I did. We were friends the whole time. And he's from England. So it's like we're this like little melting pot in our household together of combining different cultures because that was also what I've known. It was always about dating someone within your culture who
Mhm.
understands the Latin community and ways and so on. So even just taking that leap of trusting my instincts to say, I've always wanted to work abroad and study abroad, let me just go for it. It opened up a whole new world to me that I didn't even think was possible.
Mhm.
So it's crazy what happens when you just take one step towards what you want.
Mm, that right there. Because we do not hone in on what we want. I feel like, if I'm honest, I feel like that is stripped of us in school, right? Like, because the
Yeah.
school system, and this is like a whole nother conversation. I believe the
Mm,
school system, well, I know the school system was created to make good employees, right? So
yes.
it strips
Yes.
us of our ability
Mm-hmm.
to be creative. It strips us of our imagination. What it enforces is group thought,
Yeah.
and then that becomes our life, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
kind of pack away the things that we want. We kind of pack away our desires because it's not in alignment with this conveyor belt of success that
Mm-hmm.
were fed for decades. And I think it's very similar with our healing, right? Like we come to know this way of life. We identify with the trauma that we experience. It becomes part of
Mm,
us. And then the
mm,
healing journey is like rewriting all of that conditioning, rewriting all of those
mm.
narratives
Yeah.
that were fed to us. And then it's all of a sudden like, wow, I can have what
Yeah.
I want, but first of all, what do I want? Because I haven't really considered
Mm-hmm.
that, or I've always written it off as an impossibility. I think there's so much magic in the healing process, so much magic
Mm,
in taking radical ownership of our lives and
yeah.
really making decisions for us and not the collective. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so much. And I think that end travel opens us up to endless possibilities,
Yeah.
which like it just makes the world bigger in some
And
senses.
it's what we deserve.
Hmm.
We deserve to be able to access to a different reality, not even
Mhm.
a different reality, a peaceful reality, a fulfilling reality. And when I say fulfilling, and not in the sense of like, oh, I'm making all this money, because right, our sense of fulfillment and success can be different for everyone. But
Mhm.
just like fulfilling in the sense that you're just like, I'm doing what I want. Like I'm connected to my purpose, whether that purpose is making tons of money or not. And I put an emphasis on money because I feel like that's what is just always all around. Making more
Mhm.
money, make more money in like 30 days type of thing. These like
Mhm.
kind of quick fixes. And yeah, a peaceful, satisfying life, I feel like is what is we deserve that.
Mhm.
That is our birthright.
Birthright, ma'am. Birthright.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to start claiming it. Well, Bree, this has been a really
Mm,
beautiful conversation. I really enjoyed the way it unfolded. So tell us how
yes.
we can connect with you and get to learn more about you.
Yes, 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 yes. So I am on the gram. I'm on Instagram at tu vida. So your life, but in Spanish, tu vida underscore mind body. So I can send you the details for that. And I also want to send a somatic meditation that I've created, like a somatic sequence meditation. It's about like 20 minutes. You listen to it, it shows you different types of techniques that can be used to really
Mhm.
help you start regulating your nervous system, because this is something that it has to be accessible to all of
Mhm.
us.
I
So I'll
appreciate
also
that.
send you that too for the
Yes,
listeners.
I appreciate that, and it will all be in the show notes. So have a look, listeners. Before we wrap it all up, Bree, one final takeaway for the listeners.
Hmm. I feel like we're all on our own path. So you might be listening to this and think, okay, yeah, she's been through some trauma, but now she's living her best life in Spain in the sun with the palm trees. And sometimes people
Fresh
think like, oh,
food.
your life's, yeah, and the fresh food. So people think like your life is a vacation. And it might look like that because of the surroundings, but it hasn't necessarily been that, because I've started from scratch in another country. So I don't want to paint the wrong picture that moving to another country solved all my problems, because if anything, it highlighted them, because I couldn't really ignore them or escape them, that burden that I was carrying from my past traumas. Even
Mhm.
the relationship that I'm now in, it was a mirror too. So I say all this because we all have our own story and our own journey. That no matter where you find yourself within your journey, just know that even just being here today is that first step to either feel a little bit more courage, feel a little bit of inspiration about thinking about, what life do I actually want? This is what Bree did because that's what she wanted, but what life do I want? Because your fulfilling, peaceful life doesn't have to look like mine. So you don't have to leave the country or move to another state, wherever you might be. That was just something that I always wanted. So what I want you to walk away with is to own your story, to try to find a little bit of compassion about where you're at, because it's not where you're going to be at forever. And being here, listening, reflecting, you know, that's going to bring you to new places, to new resources, to new ideas even. So allowing yourself to be open to see what comes up, because you
Mhm.
deserve that. And there's no need for us to compare, right? You got your own beautiful life because that's how it's been written, let's say. And where you're at is going to give you the insights that's only meant for you. So trusting that.
Trust that, listeners. Bree, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
Yes, and listeners, thank you for catching another episode of Survival Mode Disrupted. I want to remind you, you were not built to break, but you damn sure were not built to just survive. Disrupt the
Mm,
cycle, reclaim your life, and thrive on your own terms. And I will see you
mm.
next week.